This is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1, and welcome to the Monday Murtathon. And we have Field McConnell still in house arrest on another day. We inch closer to the day when Field McConnell might have his first hearing, provided we have this virus under control by then, but who knows at this stage of the game. And we have rather weird things happening this week. And one of the weird things we have happening this week is Timothy Charles Holmseth is at it again. He got on his little internet connection there, and again, this is from a shopping center parking lot, because President Trump is too cheap to provide Timothy Charles Holmseth with a decent internet connection. So he has to go sit in the parking lot of a shopping center and spew this latest weirdness of his. Now, I'd like to remind people of something here. Preacher Dan is the primary defendant in a lawsuit brought by 4 plaintiffs. And Craig Sawyer, who runs his own little child rescue group, is one of the plaintiffs. And whether Timothy Charles Holmseth realizes it or not, he is one of the defendants in this lawsuit. Apparently his handler hasn't made him aware of this information, or he chooses to ignore it. But the bottom line is that Craig Sawyer is suing Timothy Charles Holmseth. And so what does Timothy Charles Holmseth do? He turns around and gives Craig Sawyer more evidence. Now, how is he doing this? Apparently, Max Jones of InfoWars is joining forces with Craig Sawyer. Or, I guess they've had an association for quite some time anyway. But this is something that's been a burr up Tim Holmseth's ass for quite a while, is this association with Craig Sawyer and InfoWars. So Tim Holmseth comes out with this article and calls Craig Sawyer a big fraud, calls InfoWars a big fraud, and gets into this diatribe where they are trying to defraud the American public because they are pretending to be or to hijack the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. And I find this kind of amusing, since there is no such thing as the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. So Timothy Charles Holmseth is ranting and raving about something that doesn't even exist. And, there are people out in the world, such as Randy Erickson, that are absolutely stupid enough to believe in this crap. Although I have an opinion that she may have had something to do with the creation of this nonsense, but I digress. At any rate, Timothy Charles Holmseth is having a fit because he claims that Craig Sawyer, and the owner of InfoWars, is out to steal his precious Pentagon Pedophile Task Force and call it something else and go around saving children. Now, Timothy had been off the subject of saving children for a while. He's gotten swept up in the coronavirus and all the conspiracy theories surrounding this disease, this virus. And now he's saying that only the important people that are the ones getting the virus. People like Rand Paul and senators and so forth. And, never mind that we just had an aircraft crew member, I think it was a maintenance man, die, and we've got flight attendants testing positive, and we got TSA inspectors getting tested positive, and ordinary people are getting tested positive for this virus. But this is all some big plan by Q to get all the elites arrested and to clean things up in the government. This is the basic conspiracy theory behind this disease. And it's a deadly conspiracy theory because enough people believe in this crap that they're going to be running around spreading this disease to innocent victims, and more people than necessary are going to get sick and they are going to die because of people like Timothy Charles Homseth with their nonsensical theories. And that's the consequences of listening to people like Timothy Homseth. You are going to die. You're going to get this virus and it is going to kill you. Now, in the little video that Timothy Homseth did on Facebook today, he mentioned his parents, specifically his father. Says it's been a long time since he's seen him, and it's unfortunate. Maybe when this is all over, he'll get to see him. Well, the only time Timothy Charles Homseth may get to see his parents is at their funeral, because they, like me, are in this risk group. And if they are listening to their son, Timothy Homseth, and his idiotic conspiracy theories about this virus, they are not going to take the necessary precautions to prevent getting this disease, and they are going to die. And Timothy hasn't really thought about that. And if he has, he doesn't care, because all Timothy Charles Homseth cares about is himself. But the fact of the matter remains that it is going to be people like Timothy Charles Homseth's parents that are going to be a victim of this deadly virus if they listen to what Tim Homseth says. If people start going around trying to find this endochrome thing and finding all these cures, they're going to die. It's that simple. It's that blunt. And this is the situation we're into today, with these morons running around professing that the reason we're having the coronavirus spread is so that Donald J. Trump can go around and get a bunch of people arrested. And it's sheer nonsense. This is a pandemic. It's deadly. People need to take the advice of medical professionals. Not people like Dr. Tammy, by the way. Mainstream medical professionals, and take the precautions that they dictate. That's what you need to do. And don't listen to people like Alex Jones, Timothy Homseth, and all these other morons out there that are they're filling your heads full of mush, because that's all it is mush. And on the front of the lawsuit that has been filed against Timothy Homseth and others, it's kind of at an idle point right now. When I checked with the court, they said that there's nothing available until these people decide to go ahead with their lawsuit, that it's very preliminary. This is just a filing of intent to sue. And what they need to do is they need to file more detailed information as time goes on. And they went through a little bit of what's going to happen as far as how the lawsuit is going to progress and what they need to do. And so This is pretty much on the order of any civil lawsuit, so it's basically going to be a nothing burger for a while until the next step is taken. But because of what Tim Homseth is doing with this latest tirade, and with the help of this person that's putting stuff up on YouTube, Craig Sawyer and the others are going to have more ammunition to go after Tim Homseth with. Because Tim Homseth is doing nothing more than burying himself in providing all this evidence to the defense, or, to the plaintiff in the case, to use against him. Now, I find it surprising that Tim Homseth hasn't mentioned the fact that he's being sued when he does these little videos and stuff. But Timothy Homseth, like I said earlier, either hasn't been told about this lawsuit or he's chosen to ignore it. And that's fine. He can ignore the lawsuit. He can keep on going after Craig Sawyer and these other people. I'm kind of glad he's doing it. The more he attacks these people and makes these accusations, the more that they have to use against Tim Homseth and the other defendants. Because remember, Tim Homseth and Preacher Dan are only two of a whole bunch of defendants. There are 11 defendants in this lawsuit. And it seems to be more or less equally divided between 5 males and 5 females. And so I believe we know who 3 out of 5 of the females are, and 3 out of the 6 male defendants are. So we'll just have to fill in the blanks when it comes to who the remaining defendants are. Now, filing a civil lawsuit is not free. If you look at the paperwork, you will notice that they have paid fees to the court for filing this paperwork. And it's, pretty fair piece of money, plus they have retained an attorney. Now, civil attorneys are not cheap. They don't like filing these kind of lawsuits unless they're going to make money. And if they're not going to make money, the civil attorney is going to charge that much more money for their services, and they are going to charge in advance. And this group is going to have to pay out their own filing fees. They're going to have to pay out the fees for having 11 people served with a summons, and so on and so forth. Now, Preacher Dan has already been served, so we know this is not a bluff. This is an active lawsuit. You don't bluff by serving somebody a summons. It's not a wise thing to do. So there is a summons out there. So Tim Homseth will eventually get sued. Now, Tim Homseth keeps doing the same stupid thing. And that is, he's using public Wi-Fi to do his narratives. And the nice thing about using public Wi-Fi is you're able to track. So those that are keeping an eye on Timothy Homseth, the investigators know precisely where he's at. Because he's using, from what I understand, he's using the same location, or he's in the same area where he constantly uses his Wi-Fi connection. And the investigators are just waiting to spring their trap and to have Timothy Homseth hauled off to jail. And so we had to thank Timothy Holmseth for giving the investigators the assurance that he's where they thought he was going to be, so that they can better keep an eye on him. And it kind of helps that the fact that he wore those sunglasses is rather interesting, but I'll get into that another time. The problem we are having right now in this country is that we have this global pandemic, and it is not doing people a lot of good for all these conspiracy theorists to be giving out this horrifically bad information. It's getting people killed. You know, you got seemingly ridiculous suggestions such as drinking Clorox out there. And there's other things out there, including the fact that many of these conspiracy theorists are calling this virus a hoax. And it is not a hoax. This is a true health crisis. People are going to get this thing and they are going to die from it. Now, out of necessity, I am maintaining the routine I maintain until such time as circumstances change. And I can tell you that the changes that I have seen on a daily basis are dramatic. You know, it started out that there were a few people that were wearing the surgical mask in public around the airport. It's not now gotten to the point where just about everybody is wearing the surgical mask. I see it all over the place. Airport employees are wearing these things. TSA agents are even starting to wear them, and passengers are have been wearing them and have started to wear these things in increasing numbers. And it is also, strangely enough, getting more common for me to see people in full-body hazmat suits walking around the airport. Now, I haven't quite been able to find out if people are wearing these things on their own or if they've been ordered to do so because they've tested positive for the disease, that the only way they can travel is they got to dress up in full hazmat suits. But it's kind of a disquieting situation to see somebody walking through the airport in hazmat suits. And these are not workers or anything. These are passengers that have been on the same plane as you wearing this getup. It's also kind of a surreal world to get on an airplane when there's only two people on the airplane other than the flight crew, and you're one of the two people. And then at other times you get on an aircraft and there may be 10, 20, 30, 40 people on a plane. So there's no more fighting for window seats. I like to fly in window seats. It's a thing. And so, you know, you get on an airplane nowadays and you can practically pick where you want to sit. And in some cases, if you get the right flight crew, you get a free upgrade to first class because nobody's sitting there. There's hardly anybody in first class because there's hardly anybody on the damn airplane. It's amazing. You know, and it's going to get to the point where you're not going to see any airplanes in the sky because they're going to get grounded. The airlines are not going to be able to afford to fly around the country with 5 or 10 people on board the aircraft. They're going to start canceling flights. Now, I know that a majority of the carriers operating in and out of Orlando International, for instance, are going to cut their flights in half. I believe that flights are going to, the late night flights are going to be canceled. Latest flight out of Orlando would be, I believe it's going to be 11 o'clock, and then the last arrival's about the same time. And that means I'm going to be arriving back in Orlando a lot sooner. So this is screwing my schedule up royally. And this is why a decision's going to have to be made on what's going to come next, because this is pulling 2 hours off my schedule that I go by when planning these trips. And that gives me 2 hours less to do what I need to do if I have to adjust for these screwball flight schedules. So I'll be making a decision here in the next few weeks about whether or not we're going to continue on the way we are, or if the government's going to mandate that we can't continue. And so that's one of the things I'll be doing this week, is we're going to be having discussions on how we're going to handle stuff after the first of the month. So you might see me doing more murder-thons and less mobile-thons after the 1st of April, but we'll see what happens. But I do know that my schedule is going to get weirded out because of the way the airlines are doing things as of the 1st of the month. And that's the thing about what's going on, is society as a whole is being affected by this. Newspapers are being affected because of revenue concerns and people being able to get to work. The mainstream media is being hit hard, especially at the local outfits. So the conspiracy theories are getting their wish, because it's getting more difficult for the mainstream media to do their job. And they're having to curtail services as a result. And this gives rise to the conspiracy theorists and the conspiracy nuts getting more and more of their nonsense out there and creating all kinds of confusion as a result. But things like movie theaters, people are not going to the movies. And because of that, you have people that work for theater chains are getting laid off. Vendors that sell the food products to the movie theaters are not selling food products. Restaurants are closing. Everything is closing. It's getting to the point where you're just not able to do anything. You lose your job, so you're not able to buy anything. It's getting bad. And, while I am making this video, they are arguing in Congress about what they're going to do about it. Are they going to give people paychecks to cover them for however long this thing's going to take to get over with? Is it going to be a one-time deal? Is it going to be a monthly stipend? Are people like me who are on Social Security going to get anything out of this? Or is it just going to be a select few that meet criteria, such as the fact that they have a job? Are they going to get it? I mean, there's things that need to be worked out in this plan. And it needs to be worked out if the corporations are going to get a bailout. So there's a lot of positioning going on. And whatever happens, I guess. We will soon know. It's kind of interesting. The Turnpike is no longer allowing toll attendants in the booth. You have to pay by plate now. Or else you got to have one of these little transponder thingies like I've got on my windshield. Because of the virus, there are no toll attendants. So those people are out of work. And I'm not sure about construction projects. I think some construction projects are still ongoing because, your social spacing is there. You're not congregating into large crowds when you're doing construction. And as I speak, we've got a vehicle on the side of the road up here. A couple dump trucks with the little barriers on the back of them. I think they're putting down sod. So people are doing work on the highway. You know, putting down sod to make sure we got a nice lawn on the side of the highway. Yeah, I guess. But this is just one of these days during my mobile thons where I'm kind of digging around in my little mind trying to think about things to talk about. And there really isn't a whole hell of a lot to talk about. You know, because the big thing in the news is this stupid lawsuit. And now the actions of Timothy Charles Homseth. And I will probably get another attack against me out of this, because when Tim Homseth gets backed into a corner, he pulls out 11-year-old files and attacks me with them. But that's Timmy. That's all Timmy knows how to do. So if he attacks me again, you'll know why. Because usually what happens if I shut up about Timmy or move on to a different subject, he leaves me alone. But if I start talking about Timmy and pointing out what a goofball he is, he goes into his little file cabinet and he pulls out this nonsense. Because he's a child. He acts like a child. And one thing strange about Tim Homseth, you know, he feels free to criticize me and to make all these stories about me up, but he blocks me so that I can't see this stuff. I have to rely on other people to get me this stuff, because that's how much of a chicken shit that Tim Homseth is. And then he blocks me from these accounts so I can't see his stuff. And so do his minions. You know, that's how scared they are of this retired truck driver. They sit there and they do all this stuff in secret. They have their secret little rooms where they say, what are we going to do to shut Mert up? We're going to call the various courthouses and send this stuff to him so that the courthouses won't give him the information he needs to do his webcast. Are we going to make up fake officers of the court to criticize him? Because that one criticism he put up a criticism by a judicial officer. As you can pretty well guess who that was. But he didn't name the judicial officer. He didn't put where the comment came from. He just put up that some judicial officer criticized me by poking fun of me, and didn't say the context of the you know, this is what Tim does. He makes stuff up out of thin air. It's a lie. You know, unless it's somebody like Randy Q, who claims to be a judge, or that nitwit from Alaska. You know, there's no real judicial officer. It's just somebody that Tim Homseth made up out of the top of his head, because I challenge him to put up the name of the judicial officer. He won't do it, of course. I get a kick out of knowing who this judicial officer is. You know, it's kind of like a guessing game to try and figure out who it is. And once again, I have to comment about this. Now, in the video Timothy Homseth made today, he was in a car again, the same car. He was piggybacking off of a public Wi-Fi. And it's the same Wi-Fi he's piggybacked off before. It's in a shopping mall in the same exact area he's been in for quite a long time now. So he's not moving around. I guess they're done with their little honeymoon. But I find it strange that he has to go to a shopping center to use a Wi-Fi connection, and a very unreliable Wi-Fi connection at that. And it's mainly because he's pretty far away from the router. Because he's probably where he's only getting a bar or two, and he's getting a dropout. And that means he's more than 100 feet away from the router. Because when you're really close to a Wi-Fi router and you get like 4 or 5 bars of signal, you're able to do your thing. But the farther away you get from the router, if it's a localized router, and you get a signal drop, your bit rate drops, so you're not able to get as much information upon the internet. You get it, and your bandwidth narrows. And this is what's happening to Timmy in his little car. He's too far away from the router. Because he's got a 5G connection with the router. But he's too far away from it. And he can't take his laptop into the establishment that owns the router, because then we'd know exactly where he is. We already know anyway, but everybody would know. So he has to sit in the car and do the webcast. And what's interesting to note is he's not sitting in a living room lounger doing these videos. He's in a car. Now, why on earth is Tim Homseth still sitting in a car doing these webcasts? Why isn't he in a house? Because there are precautions you can take. If you want to use somebody's house and you've got the know-how, you can hide your location from people, at least from some people, those that don't have the technical wherewithal to know how to bypass these precautions. You can hide. And Tim Homseth can't do that. And so he goes out and he sits in his little car next to an establishment that has a public router, an unencrypted router. And this is supposed to be the press secretary of the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. This is possibly one of the stupidest things I have ever seen in the 30 plus years that I've been on the internet. That someone who claims to be a high-ranking agent in the federal government, the spokesperson for the high command, the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force, has to resort to sitting in a public parking lot, piggybacking off of public Wi-Fi. Can't even afford to buy his own hotspot or use a hotspot on a smartphone. He's got to seek out a public, unencrypted Wi-Fi. The least safe way to communicate in the outside world. It's like he might as well sit out in the middle of the road with a sign pointing at him saying, "This is Timothy Homseth. I am here." Because he's using a Wi-Fi that is easily tracked. But, what can you do? People actually believe in Timothy Homseth. That's what's so funny about this. It's that this guy who does not have a job of any kind can sit in the middle of a parking lot, piggybacking off a public Wi-Fi signal, like a McDonald's or a sit-down, a restaurant or something that offers free Wi-Fi to its customers, and pull off this elaborate hoax. It is sad, ridiculous, stupid, whatever you want to call it. And when challenged to put your money where your mouth is, he gaslights you. See, this is what you have to remember. All those people out there that read stuff that Tim Homseth puts up. Tim Homseth has been challenged day after day week after week, month after month, year after year, to prove this stuff. And instead of doing that, he gaslights the person wanting the information, and in this case, me. It's a pattern. If you go back and look at every time Tim Holmseth has put up the same defamatory material about me, it's because I have challenged him. He's about the most predictable person I've ever met. Because he can't prove what he says. He can't prove that the Pentagon pedophile exists because it does not exist. And so he goes out and he uses information generated by a convicted pedophile. Now think about that. Here's a guy that's supposed to be the press secretary of the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. He's supposed to be fighting pedophiles. But what does he do? He aids and abets pedophiles. He helps the pedophiles in their cause. And what these pedophiles want to do is they want to shut me up because I know who they are. I have proof of what they have done. I've had that proof for years. I put it out there. But instead of going after pedophiles, Tim Holmseth goes after me. You know, that has to make you wonder, why is Timothy Charles Holmseth defending pedophiles? Because that's what he's doing. When he puts up the information that's out there against me, he is defending pedophiles. He is helping pedophiles. He is helping the unregistered pedophile get revenge because of what was done to her. Which makes one wonder just exactly where Tim Holmseth truly is when it comes to pedophiles. Is he against pedophiles or not? Is he out to expose pedophiles, or is he out to actually help pedophiles? I pick B. How about you? This is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1. Until later, have a good one.